One of my concerns going into this movie was the PG-13 rating. The last thing I want is for what should be an edgy, shocking film to be watered down for children. While this concern was largely baseless and didn't feel like it was too much of a restriction on the film as a whole, I still, between this and Infinity Wars, am getting sick of PG-13 violence. I love that the movie doesn't explain outright to the audience what is happening. It opens with what their day-to-day life looks like in this awful world. It doesn't bludgeon you over the head with what's going on. It's a thinking man's horror movie. I can respect that. These monsters jump out of the ground or from wherever and eat anything that makes a sound. This means survivors must live their whole life without making noise. To be clear, that's impossible, and I would die immediately. If a problem you commonly have with horror movies is that the people are usually stupid and make bad decisions, that won't be a problem in this film. These people routinely think of things I wouldn't have, only to have it all constantly fall apart. However, if a common problem you have with horror movies is jump scares, then you are not in luck. The way the monsters work is inducive to jump scares, and jump scare noise even happens as well, which is a very bad artistic decision in my opinion, given the name of the movie and the fact that its themes are around being quiet. In fact, there's too much music in general in this movie. That's not to say that they don't do anything really smart with the sound. There's this thing that they do where whenever the camera zooms into a character, you hear what the character is hearing, and it does all this smart stuff with noise, but I feel like about halfway through the movie they kind of gave up on that, and this generic template movie noise just starts happening, and it swells when you would expect it to, etc. One final thing I'd like to talk about before getting into spoilers is the design of the monsters. So they're entirely made out of CGI, and it's implied that like their entire torso is an ear canal. Now whenever it zooms in on it, you can hear like what the monster is hearing. One thing that doesn't make sense is like they kind of hop around and generally don't seem adverse to making a lot of noise, which doesn't make sense because it seems like they would trigger other monsters of their own species, right? I mean, they even seem to make this like passive gurgling noise, and they kind of hop around sometimes. The other thing is they kind of just look like creepy four-legged creatures, and like their heads are constantly moving around in this weird CGI way. And just like, there's all these intricate little parts that are constantly moving. If I were to design these monsters, I would do a few things different. This is just my opinion on how I'd make it a little bit more creepy. I'd maybe simplify the design a little bit, you know, just kind of make it more of a Slender Man-y design. Maybe something like this right here. It just kind of creeps up behind you and you're dead. Because as it is, I feel like it's just needlessly complicated, which makes it less memorable. Now for some spoilers. Towards the beginning of the movie, one of their kids is playing with a little airplane, and his dad is like, "Yo dude, don't do that." Only he doesn't talk, he just says it with his eyes. Then he takes the helicopter from his son, removes the batteries, puts it on the table, tells his kid, he puts his finger to his lips, gesturing towards his son as though to say, "Hey, don't make noise." Later on, kid's got the helicopter, it makes noise, kid gets fucked up, he dies. This is at the very beginning of the movie. It's a great way to start the film because it shows that children will die in this movie, which is always an A+. Nobody gets to talk about the fact that their son dies. There's this slight plot device later that does allow them to talk to each other a little bit. It's revealed that the mother and the daughter blame themselves for the son's death, and the dad's like, nah, it's nobody's fault. And really, what could they have done? It's not like they can predict that the toy's going to go off even with the batteries taken out of it. It's sort of like you can blame yourself for when your house gets destroyed by a hurricane because you didn't prepare well enough, but I mean, what do you really gain out of blaming yourself? It's one of many interesting things that this movie has to say about the human condition. And if you think it's kind of pretentious to call it commentary on the human condition, keep in mind that this is a thinking man's movie. And that's about all I have to say.